Hello, dear viewer, and thank you for joining me on day 37 of reading the Bible together. Today we are reading Exodus chapter 26 and 27 from the Old Testament, as well as Matthew chapter 22, verse 23 to 46 from the New Testament. Let's start. Exodus chapter 26, the tent of the Lord's presence. Make the interior of the sacred tent, the tent of my presence, out of 10 pieces of fine linen woven with blue, purple, and red wool. Embroider them with figures of winged creatures. Make each piece the same size, 14 yards long and 2 yards wide. Sew 5 of them together in one set and do the same with the other 5. Make loops of blue cloth on the edge of the outside piece in each set. Put 50 loops on the first piece of the first set and 50 loops matching them on the last piece of the second set. Make 50 gold hooks with which to join the 2 sets into one piece. Make a cover for the tent out of 11 pieces of cloth made of goat's hair. Make them all the same size, 15 yards long and 2 yards wide. Sew 5 of them together in one set and the other 6 in another set. Fold the 6th piece double over the front of the tent. Put 50 loops on the edge of the last piece of one set and 50 loops on the edge of the other set. Make 50 bronze hooks and put them in the loops to join the 2 sets so as to form one cover. Hang the extra half piece over the back of the tent. The extra half yard on each side of the length is to hang over the sides of the tent to cover it. Make 2 more coverings, one of ram skin dyed red and the other of fine leather to serve as the outer cover. Make upright frames for the tent out of acacia wood. Each frame is to be 15 feet long and 27 inches wide, with 2 matching projections so that the frames can be joined together. All the frames are to have these projections. Make 20 frames for the south side and 40 silver bases to go under them, 2 bases under each frame to hold its 2 projections. Make 20 frames for the north side of the tent and 40 silver bases, 2 under each frame. For the back of the tent on the west, make 6 frames and 2 frames for the corners. These corner frames are to be joined at the bottom and connected all the way to the top. The 2 frames that form the 2 corners are to be made in this way. So there will be 8 frames with their 16 silver bases, 2 under each frame. Make 15 crossbars of acacia wood, 5 for the frames on one side of the tent, 5 for the frames on the other side, and 5 for the frames on the west end at the back. The middle crossbar, set halfway up the frames, is to extend from one end of the tent to the other. Cover the frames with gold and fit them with gold rings to hold the crossbars, which are also to be covered with gold. Set up the tent according to the plan that I showed you on the mountain. Make a curtain of fine linen woven with blue, purple, and red wool. Embroider it with figures of winged creatures. Hang it on 4 posts of acacia wood covered with gold, fitted with hooks, and set in 4 silver bases. Place the curtain under the row of hooks in the roof of the tent and put behind the curtain the covenant box containing the 2 stone tablets. The curtain will separate the holy place from the most holy place. Put the lid on the covenant box. Outside the most holy place, put the table against the north side of the tent and the lampstand against the south side. For the entrance of the tent, make a curtain of fine linen woven with blue, purple, and red wool and decorated with embroidery. For this curtain, make 5 posts of acacia wood covered with gold and fitted with gold hooks. Make 5 bronze bases for these posts. Exodus chapter 27. The altar. Make an altar out of acacia wood. It is to be square, 7.5 feet long and 7.5 feet wide, and it is to be 4.5 feet high. Make projections at the top of the 4 corners. They are to form one piece with the altar, and the whole is to be covered with bronze. Make pans for the greasy ashes, and make shovels, bowls, hooks, and fire pans. All this equipment is to be made of bronze. Make a bronze grating and put 4 bronze carrying rings on its corners. Put the grating under the rim of the altar, so that it reaches halfway up the altar. Make carrying poles of acacia wood, cover them with bronze, and put them in the rings on each side of the altar when it is carried. Make the altar out of boards and leave it hollow, according to the plan that I showed you on the mountain. The enclosure for the tent of the Lord's presence. For the tent of my presence, make an enclosure out of fine linen curtains. On the south side, the curtains are to be 50 yards long, supported by 20 bronze posts in 20 bronze bases, with hooks and rods made of silver. Do the same on the north side of the enclosure. On the west side, there are to be curtains 25 yards long, with 10 posts and 10 bases. On the east side, where the entrance is, the enclosure is also to be 25 yards wide. On each side of the entrance, there are to be 7.5 yards of curtains, with 3 posts and 3 bases. For the entrance itself, there is to be a curtain 10 yards long, made of fine linen woven with blue, purple, and red wool, and decorated with embroidery. It is to be supported by 4 posts in 4 bases. All the posts around the enclosure are to be connected with silver rods, and their hooks are to be made of silver, and their bases of bronze. The enclosure is to be 50 yards long, 25 yards wide, and 2.5 yards high. The curtains are to be made of fine linen, and the bases of bronze. All the equipment that is used in the tent, and all the pegs for the tent and for the enclosure, are to be made of bronze. Taking care of the lamp. Command the people of Israel to bring you the best olive oil for the lamp, so that it can be lit each evening. Aaron and his sons are to set up the lamp in the tent of my presence, outside the curtain which is in front of the covenant box. There in my presence it is to burn from evening until morning. This command is to be kept forever by the Israelites and their descendants. Please feel free to pause the video here for time to reflect on what we have read. Let's continue. Matthew chapter 22, verse 23 to 46. The question about rising from death. The same day, some Sadducees came to Jesus and claimed that people will not rise from death. Teacher, they said, Moses said that if a man who has no children dies, his brother must marry the widow, so that they can have children who will be considered the dead man's children. Now there were 7 brothers who used to live here. The oldest got married and died without having children, so he left his widow to his brother. The same thing happened to the second brother, to the third, and finally to all 7. Last of all, the woman died. Now, on the day when the dead rise to life, whose wife will she be? All of them had married her. Jesus answered them, How wrong you are! It is because you don't know the Scriptures or God's power. For when the dead rise to life, they will be like the angels in heaven and will not marry. Now, as for the dead rising to life, haven't you ever read what God has told you? He said, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is the God of the living, not of the dead. When the crowds heard this, they were amazed at his teaching. The Great Commandment. When the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they came together, and one of them, a teacher of the law, tried to trap him with a question. Teacher, he asked, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus answered, Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and the most important commandment. The second most important commandment is like it. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. The whole law of Moses and the teachings of the prophets depend on these 2 commandments. The question about the Messiah. When some Pharisees gathered together, Jesus asked them, "What do you think about the Messiah? Whose descendant is he?" "He is David's descendant," they answered. "Why then," Jesus asked, "did the Spirit inspire David to call him Lord?" David said, "The Lord said to my Lord, 'Sit here at my right side until I put your enemies under your feet.'" If then David called him Lord, how can the Messiah be David's descendant? No one was able to give Jesus any answer, and from that day on, no one dared to ask him any more questions. Please feel free to pause the video here for time to reflect on what we have read. That's it for today, and I hope that you'll join me in the next video. Wishing you a graceful morning, day, or evening.